All right, well, tonight we're going to be coming to an end, a conclusion of our teaching series on vocation. And what I'm going to be doing then in 2 weeks' time is we're going to begin to think about Christian hospitality. Hence why I have those books on the table right there. The Gospel Comes with a House Key. So if you don't already have one, then just take it for free, please. If you're going to read along, I'm not promising I'm going to follow exactly the outline of that book, but what I tend to do is find a book that I find to be a helpful, overview and summary and helpful train of thought, and I follow that general pattern, but I might stray from it from time to time. So in this series, I've been following a book approximately written by Gene Veith. It's called God at Work. It's back to that idea of vocation being a mask of God, that God's at work through our vocations to serve other people, and He's at work through the vocations of others to serve us. And so that's the book I've been kind of following here. But the next one I'd probably follow is that one, Gospel Comes with a House Key. But tonight we bring this to a close. We're going to think about vocation and the polis. As I've mentioned previously, polis is a Greek word meaning city. So why am I not just saying city? My reason for that is that I want to try to put something in your mind that reminds you that this notion of our calling to the city is not the same thing as our calling to an urban place, okay? That's not what I mean by the city. I mean toward society. I mean toward community. I think by just simply thinking only the city and not having a little, thing in our back of our mind to remind us, we might begin to elevate urban environments over against rural environments. And I think that's wrong to do. And I think there are some people in our day who are beginning to do that, to prioritize the urban banker over against the rural farmer, where both are legitimate callings from God. Both kinds of communities are legitimate communities, and we should not trash one or trash the other. So that's why I've been calling it vocation and the polis. But since I've explained myself now, I'll start just using the word city for the rest of this talk, but know that I'm meaning polis in this broader sense. Okay? Broadly speaking, there are two communities, two polis, or two cities to which we all belong. One spiritual and one earthly. Some have spoken of this as a dual citizenship that is held by mankind. There's an earthly citizenship that Christians and non-Christians share in common, and then a spiritual citizenship that divides Christians from non-Christians. So let's get started with these considerations as we think about what these two cities are, and then we'll think at the end about how this shapes our perspective on life around us. So we begin, as I think I've begun every single teaching session, by going back to the Garden of Eden. You have to do this when we think about vocation and calling. And then we're going to go to the flood, because you have to do that as well. We've done it every single time. I hope you're going to get the theme here. So, prior to the fall, there was only one city and only one citizenship. The Lord gave man and woman to each other, blessed them with procreation, then they were called to multiply, and if they had not sinned, in due time a city would have resulted. More and more families would have come upon the face of the world. It would have become a great united community that would be spreading across the world. But once again, this single united community would not have been just a simple urban center. It would have included rural lands as well, pasture for livestock, orchards for fruit trees, and fields for harvesting. So again, we're not thinking here as a pre-fall city that's only the New York City. We're thinking both New York City and Lancaster County. Both things are part of this one city. That's what I'm getting at here. One community, one society with diverse sorts of labor occurring there. That is before the fall. One city and one citizenship. In that context, the city and the church were identical with one another. But the fall brought this to an end, disrupting the single city and the single community. We were cast into exile. But in that first gospel promise, we learned that the heavenly city and its citizenship would still endure. There would be a woman with a holy seed, representing Mother Church and her spiritual progeny. Due to the fall, Mother Church and her holy seed would then be attacked. There would be an unholy city, a spiritual opponent, the seed of the serpent that would rise up against her. Revelation calls this unholy city Babylon the harlot. Two women, two progeny, two spiritual people and spiritual citizenships. This would continue because we are in exile. This was not the case before the fall, only after the fall. There will be two spiritual cities existing alongside one another, fighting with one another for a time. Following Augustine, these two cities, the spiritual cities, are often called the city of God and the city of man. But one of the things that we must not forget is that there's not only a spiritual citizenship, that we are citizens of heaven. There's also a second kind of citizenship that all mankind has. It was formally established after the flood, with the covenant of common grace, which God made with all creation, mankind, and indeed all animals. Together, we all live life under the rainbow. We are all, Christians and non-Christians, according to Genesis 9, promised that the seasons will continue, that God will restrain his own wrath, that all these things will go forward and on until that final judgment. In other words, God would not again flood the earth and effectively hit restart. This means then that there is a temporal, common realm we inhabit alongside people of other religions and no religion. God commanded all mankind there after the flood to be fruitful and multiply, to fill the earth and subdue it. He commanded all mankind there that if man sheds the blood of man, by man his blood should be shed. That this calling is a common calling that we share with non-Christians. So there's a sort of a common citizenship, we could say, as we live with non-Christians underneath the rainbow, in accordance with that covenant of common grace. This comes to tangible expression for us when we think about living in the same country as people of other religions, the same state as those of other religions, cities, neighborhoods, and so forth. We have a common calling next to those non-Christians to better the world. So let me summarize where we've come this far, and then we're going to apply this. Mankind was made, we were created to take part in society. We are made to be social creatures. Since the fall, all mankind has a twofold citizenship. There is a common citizenship which Christians and non-Christians share in common. This is temporary, this is earthly, this was formally established by the common grace covenant after the flood. That's life under the rainbow. But then there's a second citizenship, a spiritual citizenship, which is not the same between Christians and non-Christians. This is what some call the antithesis. Christians are citizens of the city of God, the church. Non-Christians belong to what's called the city of man. So, why does this matter? Why do we even need to think about this? Much of this seems obvious. Well, the vocation toward the city, or polis, it requires us, it takes us outside our immediate family circles and makes us all part of something much bigger. It clarifies for us the calling that we have to love and serve our neighbors. In temporal matters, we are in this together. even if we have very different views on things. This challenges those that view interaction outside the home as some sort of necessary evil. No, God made us to inhabit a city. He made us to be societal creatures. While our biological neighbors are our biological family might be our closest neighbors, we still have other neighbors that are a part of other families that are in society. You can think of it as concentric circles radiating outward. To the very end of the earth, we find neighbors that we are called to love and serve. This sort of a perspective, I think, corrects a growing movement in our culture. There are some disillusioned by the way of society and culture right now that are now seeking to be entirely, quote, off the grid and entirely independent of other people. Now, while establishing a homestead is not inherently sinful, there are certain excesses to which certain homesteaders may go. We are not made to be independent of everyone else. That's the point here. We are made to serve one another and to receive the service of others and to receive their service with gratitude. Some sociologists have described this kind of unique perspective of the American psyche as a dream of the little cabin in the woods. This is unique to Americans, this sort of idealization of our frontier past. That if only we could find that little cabin in the woods, live off by ourselves, never engage with anyone else except for our little family, well, wouldn't that be the ideal life? Many of us think and dream, even if we've never consciously thought of it that way. But we're not made for that. We're made for something bigger than our family. We're made to be part of a city, a polis, a community. In American Christianity, we see this same independent streak manifest in the house church movements and in those families that think they can do church by themselves, with the father being the pastor of the family. We were not created to retreat to a spiritual cabin in the woods, but rather to belong to the spiritual city, namely the church, which is then manifest in local churches. Now, as dual citizens, we should expect that we will face problems, especially in the common realm of society, but also in the church. We're outside the garden after all. The solution is not to deny our humanity and try to isolate ourselves from other people. It's not to retreat. No, isolation is dehumanizing. We were made for broader community. Instead of isolation and resignation, we should courageously care about the common good of our temporal, common grace community. This may mean volunteering. This may mean charity work. This may mean for you political activism. This may just mean mowing the lawn of a neighbor who needs some help. Retreat from society is misguided. It would prevent us from assisting and serving toward the common good and to receive the service of others. But we also, as we think about being dual citizens, that's not to put these two citizenships on the same level. No. Our common grace citizenship is only for a time. Truly, our heavenly citizenship is eternal and, indeed, primary. We should prioritize that citizenship and city that is in heaven, that city that will never be shaken, whose designer and builder is God. We are certainly called to love our next door neighbors, those who are non-Christians, and so forth. But there's also a certain special love that we extend to the brothers who are fellow citizens of heaven. After all, what is the church but the very city of God? So remind us of where we come throughout this whole series. We began by thinking about the concept of vocation as recovered in the Reformation, that calling was not to be confined to the monastery and to those who had a religious calling. Yes, a pastor has a calling, but so does everyone else. And indeed, we have all many, many callings. our callings are distinct. They can be different, but there are many callings that we have. Our callings are not only something to do. Remember, they are also something that God does for us. God's mask, where God comes to us in the callings of other people to bless us, even through the callings of non-Christians. Yet we are called to do something. We are called to be active and to see God as part of this world and summoning us outside of ourselves. We're called to piety. We are called to labor. We're called to family. We're called to the city as well. I don't think I'm missing any. So let's just say I've recapped everything and leave it at that.